Alabama's got a football scrimmage tomorrow. What can we expect from it?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. Big weekend, not A-Day, but there'll be a scrimmage on Saturday, and baseball has a huge home series against Auburn. Softball's playing against Mississippi State, and there's basketball visits and football visits and just a bunch of stuff going on.
Pretty busy for the offseason, you know. Thank you, everybody, for making us your first listen. We appreciate that, and appreciate me for remembering to say that at the very beginning of the program. Jimmy, we got a big scrimmage tomorrow. It's the Red Elephant Club scrimmage, right? So Red Elephant Club members will be there, right?
Yeah, but, you know, they call it that because so many of the people that are there are from the various Red Elephant clubs, but other people are there too. A Club, I think, comes to this, you know, former Bama letterman, Nick's kids, everybody that works for Nick's Foundation, which is some of the big wigs that pay for everything. So it's a pretty large, diverse group, and I think so many people call it the Red Elephant Scrimmage because that's the majority of people there are from the various Red Elephant clubs all over Alabama and all over the South.
Oh, I gave you the screen, so I was thinking, oh, Jimmy's going to go for a while. Then you.
I can.
I know. Well, I'm going to give you another chance. I've shared the screen again with myself, and So I think just tell us what do you expect? Do you think we will get any resolution to things like the quarterback situation? Now, we're not going to have a resolution. That's a bad way for me to put that. But do you think the picture could become any more clear?
No, I think it'll be muddled because now not only will we have Coach Saban telling us when the scrimmage, I would imagine he's not going to want to give too much insight, I don't think, into one being ahead of the other or be too critical as he's trying to build these guys up. He's not going to go tear them down in the media. But now adding to the craziness, Luke, is going to be the fact that there will be a few hundred people there, all with their own opinions now. Now it's not about what happened last season. It's about what happens in the scrimmage. And who knows, those people will share their opinions via social media and message boards, even though they're not supposed to. And I think it'll just muddle things up because people have their own opinions, even though they're not on the staff or aware of what the quarterback's responsibilities are in every single snap and what the play was supposed to look like and all that stuff. Stop everybody from having their opinion about who the quarterback should be. So I think the volume is going to get turned up, particularly if one guy has a real good day and one guy struggles. If that's the case, I anticipate a lot of volume from Alabama fans late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night on the various interwebs. So that'll be interesting. And I've been a part of a lot of these things. I mean, in terms of AJ versus Phillip Sims and Jacob Coker versus Blake Sims and the never-ending Tua versus Jalen. And, you know, people make too much of what happens in a single practice. There's no doubt that's the case, and there's no doubt they'll do it again tomorrow. It is a practice. It's not a real game. It's not the real football, frankly, with the quarterbacks. They'll be wearing black jerseys, no contact. A lot of players will be missing. Still, we'll have some defensive players out. Who knows who will be out Saturday that's unknown to the rest of us. So, I don't think it should be something we make too big a deal of. On the other hand, it is more important than a normal practice. It's more important than what they do on a Monday or a Wednesday at the facility. It's in the stadium. It's game-like. And they do put, I know for a little inside baseball here, they do put some pressure on these kids in the scrimmage. They want it to be as game-like as possible, so they up the pressure on these kids. Hey, you got to perform or you're not moving up the chart, or if you don't perform, you could move down. And in the fall, it's even bigger, with games approaching. So really looking forward to Coach Saban's comments following this scrimmage. Maybe this time we'll even get some stats from Coach Saban, so all of us can have a good idea of what went on.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to, again, the overreactions on the message boards, because there will be some folks on the message boards who get on there and they post a report, even though you're not supposed to do that. But you can do it, I guess, anonymously and probably not get in trouble. And you're not supposed to do it. But frankly, I appreciate those people, because that's really the only way I'm going to get a report on it, unless I talk to some other folks who may be there. And I'm hoping to do that too. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. And you're right. Again, we talk about overreactions from our fan base all the time. And I think there will be some overreactions from this. But I really would like to hear, just because we talked about yesterday what Rodney Orr said on Tighter Insider, that planted this seed of doubt about the quarterbacks. It
Right.
sure would be nice and refreshing to hear that the quarterbacks had a pretty good day.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't have a good day, I feel like you're just going to add fuel to that fire.
And again, it's a good day based on what the fans think, and not necessarily, what the coaches think. Even what seemingly looks like a really good day from a fan's perspective may not be from the coaches, and vice versa. Everything is just clouded by perception and everything else. What's interesting, because we're talking about Jalen Milroe. Obviously, I just wrote up this piece on the Bama Insider message board about the Texas A&M game a year ago. As we know, that's the Milroe game where he started and played the whole game. And I hadn't looked at those numbers in a while, and it's real surprising.
Jimmy, well, wait a minute. Leave that for a tease, because I pulled that up. It's just like you read my mind. We do not do a syllabus. We just sort of talk. And I pulled this up, and I was like, this is really interesting. So let's save that for the next segment.
You got it.
While I tell everybody about FanDuel, because I love FanDuel. FanDuel is just the best. I mean, they're awesome. Look, it's time for baseball. No hitters and grand slams and double plays, and people jumping up and saving home runs and hitting home runs and doing all kind of stuff. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate, unintended, with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place that bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. Look, you can bet on whether or not Aaron Judge is going to pick up where he left off with a home run, or if a pitcher is going to go over or under on the strikeouts. Or you can, if somebody's going to hit 2 hits in the game, or 1 hit in the game, or 3 hits in the game, you can do all this over under stuff. That's a lot of fun. And you can do it right there on FanDuel.com/lockedon. Don't miss your chance to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. When you join FanDuel today, just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Jimmy, I do want to add, I'm going to try and pull this up before we get into what you're talking about. I love reading the comments after we post an episode, because sometimes they can really be great. And we really do have some really cool listeners and followers. And man, I appreciate y'all a ton, because I really do try and read all the comments. I want y'all to know that. I'm trying to find Martin Thomas. I mean, your name's right there, so I'm not throwing you under the bus. He said, "Love you, Luke, but man, you can make some really funny faces, pal. Maybe it's a natural frown." And I'm like, man, I got so many problems right now. Now I got to worry about my face. Oh my God. And then I did also appreciate this one. Look, if I'm going to put me under the bus, I'm going to throw you under the bus. Mark Williams, who never misses a chance to really, speaking, again, I keep using the term throw us under the bus. He listens to the show regularly, so I appreciate you. But he said, could Jimmy Lawyer Boy be more verbose? And then he did an upside down question mark for some reason. It reminds me of school, assigned to write a 3-page paper and writing as big as possible and over explaining different theories to fill up space. It's like reading mean tweets. And then for me, you remember yesterday I told the story about my little lap dog Zeta. He said, dogs were never intended to live in a house. Luke just confirmed my snowflake suspicions with his latest uninteresting dog story.
With his latest uninteresting dog story.
I mean, God, I've told y'all before, I take depression medication. If y'all could ease up, I would appreciate it.
Even your dog's on anxiety medication.
Yes. So anyway.
You think your dog is reading the YouTube comments?
My dog would probably write them and be like, someone get me the heck out of here. Living here is so rough.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
Tell him to stop talking about my problems! Exclamation point.
All right, let's talk about the Texas A&M rehash. This is something you do every summer that's so great, where you go back and look at each game from the previous year, no matter how mundane the game was, and you try to maybe learn something new that we didn't see before. And it is cool to go back and look at these games because you look at them with a different lens. I mean, when we watch Texas A&M in the moment, of course, you just have the visceral reaction. Then if you look at it 2 weeks later, you're like, okay, we could see where we were going to have problems later in the year. But now you look at it in the summertime or springtime and you go, okay, I'm going to look at who's going to be a star for next year or where we may have a problem for next year. So just talk about what you saw in this game.
Well, really, it's in this particular thing, it's just more of a stat or box score review. I am going to watch the entire tape. That's coming up soon in a series. But this is really more of a reminder. And what I really want to focus on in all these pieces is what our returning players did, the guys that are coming back to the team, because Gibbs and Will and Bryce, I mean, that's fun, but that's yesterday's team. We're focusing on the upcoming team and what our returning players did a season ago. That's most of the focus of these things. So a lot of the focus on my A&M piece was really about Jalen Milroe and what he did. And I haven't looked at those numbers in a while. And really, it's super notable, both the good and the bad. There's a lot of bad. It really is. I mean, and by that, I mean, Alabama turned over the ball 4 times in the game. Why was this game close? Why was a game that Alabama should have won more easily against a team that wasn't that good? A&M was in the midst of a 6-game losing streak when they played Alabama. How did A&M almost win the game? 2 reasons. Number one, the turnovers. Largely, Jalen Milroe. He only threw 1 interception. See, I think that number would surprise people. We've talked about how bad Jalen played in that A&M game for so long. I think if we went back and asked Alabama fans that hadn't looked at the box score in forever, they'd be surprised to learn there was only 1 interception that Jalen threw. Now, I think a couple other balls could have been intercepted, but they weren't. Secondly, the fumbles. Alabama fumbled 3 times. Twice it was Jalen Milroe fumbling the ball inside the pocket. And I know we remember those plays. So the 3 turnovers that Alabama committed were a huge reason the game was tight at the end. It was also tight for this reason, Luke, and this has nothing to do with Jalen Milroe. Alabama gave up just too many yards passing. Haynes King, who was not a quality quarterback, who was eventually benched by A&M in favor of a true freshman by late in the season. But Haynes King threw for like 260 yards against that. Young receivers who were great talents, who were going to be future NFL stars. Evan Stewart, Moose Muhammad, and Chris Marshall, those 3 receivers at A&M, had 217 yards against Alabama. Those are outside receivers, not really slot guys, not the best night for Alabama's cornerbacks or the pass rush. That has nothing to do with Milroe, but you can't give up 265 yards passing to Haynes King. You can't give up 200 to 3 young receivers. I think all 3 of those guys are freshmen. I think Moose might be a sophomore. But gosh, it wasn't just Milroe, although that was a big part of it. Also, this about Milroe's performance that a lot of people might not remember: 3 touchdown passes. 3. He only threw the ball 19 times. 1 out of 6 pass attempts resulted in a touchdown. That's big time good numbers. He also rushed on 17 carries. But most, but why did Alabama win the game? Easy answer here: rushing yards. Alabama had a great game on the ground. Jahmyr Gibbs probably had the best game of his Alabama career that night. And I've talked about in depth why does Alabama run the ball so good when Jalen Milroe's in? Part of it is because Milroe's running the ball, right? You got a quarterback that's an extra running back, on the field. That's going to make the offense tough to defend. but it's actually even more of an X's and O's reason as to why Alabama runs the ball so well with Milroe in the game. How about this number? It's stunning, and I don't have it in front of me. I think Luke does, so Luke can correct me. But Jahmyr Gibbs, in the 2 games he was the running back, when Milroe was the quarterback, Gibbs ran something like 39 times for 360 yards. That is stunning production that Gibbs did not produce from the running back position during any other stretch of the season. It was when Milroe was a quarterback. And why was that? I'm sure a lot of fans why would that make a difference as to who's a quarterback, whether Gibbs is going to have a big game or not? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, it makes a huge amount of sense. It's because Bryce Young's not a run threat. When Bryce Young's in the game, there is hardly ever a spy on Bryce Young. Why spy somebody who's not going to run the football? Now, it does happen. It's not like 100% of the time. But the vast majority of the time Bryce is in the game, the other team does not use a spy on him. When Milroe is the quarterback, everyone uses a spy. You've got to. The first thing you want to do on defense is we are not going to let that dude beat us with his legs, because that's what they all know he's good at. So every team that plays Alabama, when Milroe is a quarterback, they utilize a spy. Who is the spy? Usually an inside linebacker. So if you got an inside linebacker who's one of your primary run stoppers to the quarterback, that's one less defender in the box for Gibbs. And Gibbs, as you know, is a home run threat. When you remove it, it's really like playing 11 on 10 at that point, or 10 on 10. Or like I said, when there's an inside linebacker that's not accounting for Gibbs, now it's off to the races for him. His numbers with Milroe in the game are astounding. I think this is a big subject of discussion in the Mal Moore building about, hey, when they're trying to piece together an offense, I think they know from the Milroe experience a year ago, hey, we might struggle to throw the ball a bit, but when Milroe's in the game, we're going to get big-time production out of that running back spot.
Boy, and that may be a clue about what's going to happen ultimately, because that's kind of where Alabama seems to be headed, right? I mean, more of a running attack. And, the first thing that popped into my head when you had that stat about Jahmyr Gibbs, 39 carries, 316 yards, and 2 touchdowns, my first thought was, well, 2 of those runs were against Arkansas when Arkansas wasn't planning to face Jalen Milroe, which that's very fair. So what I did was I backed those 2 runs out. By the way, those were the 2 touchdowns he had. But I backed those 2 runs out. And before I backed him out, he was averaging about 9 yards a carry. And I backed those 2 out, backed those 2 carries out, and he's still averaging 5.6 yards per carry. So it's not like, it's still very, very good. So, and here's the other thing. Everybody is always like, we'll take that 75-yard run out. But that was part of the game. You can't just take it out.
It's this wall of negativity and I see all the time. Not specific people but I see all the time people complaining about the softball team not playing well. They're like, yeah, take Montana Fouts out and this team's terrible. Why do we have to take Fouts out? We recruit. She's here on purpose. She's here on purpose. This was part of the plan that we recruit.
It's not like she accidentally she was in science class at Texas Tech, and then she just showed, why am I on a mound in Tuscaloosa about to pitch a softball? This makes no sense. All right, let's take a break.
Are we going to take Mahomes? Okay, let's take Mahomes off the Chiefs. Let's take Babe Ruth off the Yankees.
And by the way, before I do go to break, I want to say one more thing. You mentioned about Bryce Young and never really running. In fact, he only ran when it was that's the absolute last resort. I mean, there was nothing else to do. There was never a time that I remember that Bryce Young did a read option and kept the ball. Even at the times when we thought he was going to run, he would do a little pitch out to somebody very quick. The pass to Cameron Latu for a touchdown against Tennessee, if you remember last year. It looked like he was going to run into the end zone. Instead, he flipped it at the last moment, which is probably the more dangerous play. But when Bryce is doing it, it's fine. If somebody else does it, they're an idiot. Except Mahomes, maybe, and maybe Aaron Rodgers. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to run down a few other odd and end things happen on campus this weekend. And we're back. So, Jimmy, Alabama Auburn baseball this series this weekend. I don't want to go off on a rant. I just want to remind everybody about it. It's an interesting series. I know that look. I'm pretty disappointed in going 1 out of 2 at home against Mississippi State last weekend.
Yeah.
So I do listen to some programs around here. They are not very optimistic about this weekend either. So it could be a battle of who could disappoint less this weekend, which fine. I just want to take 2. My hope is we take 2 of 3. That's my hope. We hadn't won a
Well,
series.
here's what's interesting, because we spend a lot of time on bracketology on basketball, right? How about this note? This is how big this series is, Luke. Baseball America, they do a bracketology. They're like the Joe Lunardi of, they're Joey brackets of baseball. Baseball America this week going into the series, Alabama among the last 4 in the tournament, Auburn last 4 out. So that's pretty big. This is the basketball equivalent of that. Would be a monster game.
Well, then I'm going to need you to compliment me a little bit as a guy who doesn't follow baseball much. Yeah. Earlier this week, you were like, we're clearly in. And I said, how can we be in? And and you thought we'd be a 2 seed. I just don't see it. I mean, there has to be more. I mean, and again, I'm as Alabama as they come, but I can't watch a team like this that goes 1 and 2 in every series. And in the SEC, as tough as the SEC is, and say, yeah, this team deserves a shot at a national championship. It's fundamentally flawed to me. So, but anyway.
Well, the reason being, and you were correct, but the reason being is last week when we talked about that was before the Mississippi State series. Alabama was
right.
And in baseball regionals, the seedings don't work anything like basketball. The seedings are only 1 through 4, and Alabama was a 2 last week. There were 3 last week. You've got to be a 3 to be in as an at-large. A 3, the last few 3s are at-larges that barely make it in. Alabama was a 2 the week before. So they've fallen from a 2 to a 3 due to the series loss to Mississippi State, who came into the weekend 1 and 8 in the SEC. So, yeah, that series loss to Mississippi State was a big blow, and it's knocked Alabama to where they're barely hanging on. And Alabama really needs 2 of 3 against Auburn. And my understanding is Alabama's normal Friday night starting pitcher, Ben Hess, is going to have to miss his start again, 2nd week in a row. I think a big reason Alabama lost that Friday night game to Mississippi State was not having out there, having to be replaced at the last minute. Looks like he's a no-go for tonight too. So there's more of Alabama's traditional great luck on the diamond.
God, I can't tell you how hard I'm concentrating not to make a bunch of funny faces.
Because people are like,
because people are like analyzing my facial expressions now. And I think I've been thinking about that. Like ever since that guy said that, I was like, I think I do make a lot of faces. That's been on my mind. Like he is really screwed with my head.
I mean, look, you have a face right now. We both got busted having faces.
All right, Alabama, Mississippi State softball. Look, again, Alabama softball. I mean, it's been okay. It certainly hadn't been overwhelming.
Right.
Need a series win here. Need a sweep, if you ask me. But I don't really want to get into that. Instead, I was going to say, looks like Alabama basketball's got 2 assistants. They're going to hire Austin Claunch, and then name escapes me from the Pelicans, which is interesting because I was watching that Pelicans game the other night while I was in Indianapolis, and then I saw the tweet about Coach Oates and Greg Byrne being there watching the game, and I was thinking that's so cool. They're there to support Tyra Lewis and Herb Jones, and they may have also been doing some double duty looking at an assistant, which is cool. I'm fine with that too. I just thought all of it was
same thing. I thought, wow, how cool is that Greg Byrne would go with Nate Oates down to support Herb in the playoffs, and they were there hiring a coach. They were there hiring a coach.
Turns out they also had a $50 gift card to Palace Cafe that expired in June, so they need to get on down there anyway. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you so much. We will be back on Sunday. We are going to wrap up this scrimmage as best we can without divulging too much information that can't be divulged, but we will. If you listen to us a lot of times, we can be sneaky good about that. So anyway, we're going to wrap up today. We will talk to you Sunday. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.